Welcome to Life by Design for Chiropractors, episode 25.
Welcome to Life by Design, the podcast for chiropractors. Here's your host, Dr. Jamie Richards.
Welcome to Life by Design for Chiropractors. I'm Dr. Jamie Richards. I'm here with my good friend. I can't believe it's been so long to bring you on this show, Dr. Laurence Tham.
Thanks for having me, man. I haven't been feeling the love. No, just joking. I can't believe it's been such a long time since we've finally found the time. The time difference is a killer.
I know. Wow. It's amazing. We were just at LifeCon, our live event, and I was surprised, but happily surprised by how many people came up to me and said they found out about Life by Design through My Practice Rules.
Yeah. Remember that old podcast?
Yeah. Well, a couple of people said they had just got onto it and they actually went back and listened to all kinds of episodes and loved it. In fact, we had a couple of people come over from your side of the world to LifeCon. Yeah. And I can't believe it. So it's been, too long. We were just talking in the pre-show about how old Andy is, and I think you were a little blown away by the fact that she was 21 months old.
Oh man, it's crazy. Like it's probably been over 2 years or 2.5 years since we stopped doing My Practice Rules, which is ridiculous. We're still getting people liking it, and which is really ridiculous. So which is great. I'm glad we just kept it up there, and so it's a resource for people.
Well, it's one of those things. It's kind of like a good TV show. You've ever watched a TV show where it only had 2 seasons or something along those lines, but it holds, and you kind of maybe you catch the show 2 or 3 years after the show actually comes out, and you go back and you watch. It's like, what? I can't believe this show's not on anymore. That's My Practice Rules.
Yeah, exactly. And I've actually had the temptation of going like, oh, should I revive it? But it's almost like it's been good. It was good to just leave it there, and almost don't want to touch it, just because it's had a good run, and it's we had some fantastic bombs, man. We those ideas that we had, it was great.
Yeah, it is what it is, and it was nice to do it, and it's nice to reconnect and have you on the episode and on the show. And we're doing this thing now, Life by Design for Chiropractors. We've built a large listenership. I was saying earlier, it's surprising to me in a good way how many people download the episode every other week, and lots of great feedback through the Life by Design for Chiropractors website. So we only bring on great guests, and I know that that's probably what every podcast thinks, but me, one of the things that's big about the way I like to approach things is everything has to match with my values. So if you look back and you see the different guests that have been on the show, it's mostly been myself and Mike and Cratio, and really only a handful of guests from, Dave Fletcher to John Minardi, Dan Sullivan. So really trying to keep it streamlined so everything is congruent. So Laurence, it's clearly obvious that you are the next logical guest. So why don't you tell people who live under a rock a little bit about yourself, just in a nutshell, who you are, what you're doing, and why they're going to want to listen to you today.
It's kind of funny. I think when you were listening, I think I'm on the show because I'm Canadian, except for good old Dan. Listen, Jamie and I, it's funny because I can't believe it's been such a long time, and the reason why is because we've been just great mates for such a long time. We went to school together, and we graduated together, and no matter how many years apart we are, we just feel like it's yesterday, and I think that's a great testament of what we had to go through. Jamie and I graduated 2002 from CMCC, and I immediately left Canada and went to Australia, and I've been practicing here since that point. I never went back. The intention was coming here for 10 months and travel with my wife, and but that we just never left, and we fell in love with it. And so I'm here in Australia, and I had a great couple of practices, and ran some great practices out in Perth. And about 2 years ago, or 2.5 years ago, I just started doing. Actually, 5 years ago, I did some a podcast called The Wellness Guy Show. Before podcasts were really that popular, and that sort of kind of took off. And I don't want to spend too much time on that, but created a network called The Wellness Couch, which Life by Design was part of at the beginning, early days. And we have over 20 plus wellness shows on there now. And we ran Wellness Summit just a few weeks ago with like 947 people, which was awesome, just for the general public. But my main thing that I do for chiropractors, and why hopefully you want to listen to this, is because I coach chiropractors all the time, and that's what I do. I have a like-minded group well, call Nitro. We help really just accelerate people's growth and practice, but more really getting to have a community of like-minded chiropractors who actually want to succeed. Very similar to, obviously you guys have a group of Life by Design people. We have a group over here in Australia, and I get a chance to, live my dream. I don't practice anymore at the moment. I decided to take some break away from it so that I can actually focus my energy on, the speaking, the podcasting, and also just coaching.
Nice. And wife and 2 young kids, right, Laurence?
That's right. I got a beautiful daughter, Kaya. She's 8 years old, and Christian is 5, and they're just growing way too fast. My beautiful wife, Karen, actually has just joined. I don't know if you know this, but she just joined me on my Inside the Champions Mind podcast that I actually been running for the last 4 years. I lost Marcus as a co-host, so he wanted to do his own podcast, so I had to find a new co-host. And logical step was, why don't I invite my wife, who've never listened to a single podcast in her life, even though I've been running it for 5 years. And so she came on, and now we're doing videos and YouTube, like we're recording it, and
Right.
she's loving it now. She's like on a podcast like download, like she's just downloading everything and listening to things. So my beautiful wife is we get to talk about life, love, and legacy.
Nice. I love it. Yeah, I did see that, Lawrence. I thought Karen was just coming on for a single episode there, but that's great that she's coming on and joining the podcast world. So she's obviously a big addition to that podcast, I'm sure. Put that in the show notes, guys, so you can check that out. Today, we really want to get into something. We get on the call, and Lawrence and I got talking, just catching up. And one of the topics that came up as we were thinking about what to do today, because one of Lawrence's expertise is in marketing. We've just been doing tons of marketing here on the Life by Design for Chiropractors podcast. So we thought we'd forego the marketing today and shift back into one of the other pillars or one of the other requirements of a successful business, which is leadership, but more specifically wrapped around this idea of why so many chiropractors are quitting the profession. You were saying, Lawrence, you came across some information that just blew your mind. I think it was a blog post you were telling me about. Just give me some feedback. It's how did this come up, and why is this so present in your mind right now?
Yeah, well, it actually kind of really hit me emotionally. And here's the thing: I know that all the listeners here and you and I love this profession. And when I see something like this, it just kind of really hurts, and it fires me up. And so one I was just about to go to bed, and I was doing something else, and Facebook happened to be on. I don't usually read at that, any posts at late at night. But this post really got to me. It was actually in a forum. It was like, Chiropractic and Students or something like that. And I looked at it, and the title of the post got me. Like, it just gravitated me. And that's good marketing from a headline point of view. It says, "Why I Quit Chiropractic." And I was like, okay, I'm going to have to read this. So it was basically a person doing an interview of another person who quit chiropractic, I don't know, say 5 years ago. Mm-hmm. And I don't know the person. I don't know the name, so that is irrelevant whether it was male or female. But anyways, I read the question and answer, and they were going through. And one of the things that stuck in my mind were 2 things. One was saying, one of the reasons why she quit chiropractic, she felt that when she graduated from chiropractic college, she felt that the profession did not support her. Right. And I went, okay. And I just sat there thinking, like, wait a second here. What profession, like what expectations to have on a profession, like when you graduate, where did anyone say that the profession was supposed to help you after you graduate? And what is the profession? What do you quote unquote profession? Like who makes up the profession? Like, is it the Australian Association Board, or like is it like the Life by Design group, or like who is the profession? It's just like the friend of the neighborhood, and that really kind of stuck my mind. But I left it alone, and then I just kept on going, and I read the comments, and the comments were a whole bunch of people saying like, man, I'm so glad that people are talking about this, and it's the truth, and we should talk about how chiropractic is hard. It's not always easy. And you know what? I read that at first. I was like, you know what? That's actually kind of true. We always talk about how great things are, and we never talk about how bad things can be and how tough it can be. And I think it's actually a worthwhile discussion to actually have an open discussion to talk about how the struggle, what are the struggles, and how to overcome them. Because I've had my struggles, you had your struggles. I think it's important to talk about. I think that's we did discuss that in my practice rules, and so I made a comment. So I read all these comments. And it was like a lot of people were just supporting it. I'm like, great. So I commented and I said, that's great. I think this is a really interesting discussion to have. I would love to know what you guys on this thread would love the profession to help you with specifically. and be specific, because I know I would put my hand up, and I know I would know many people like Jamie or and all the influencers, Jen Temples around the world, and whoever would be willing to put their hand up for free to actually help you if you actually tell us exactly what you want. Because sometimes, as us, coaches or, groups or whatever, we think they want something and we just create a product or create some sort of session to help them, right? But the thing is that if you tell us exactly what you want, we will be we can actually create something very, very specifically, probably on like right there on the spot. So I left that comment out and I went to bed. And I'm expecting like a whole bunch of massive responses telling me, okay, this is what I want. This is what I got in there, and it was one comment. And the comment wasn't even to do with what I asked for, because there was actually a question on something totally different. It was like, do you think, as a coach, do you think your associates should pay to do coaching? Like, it was relevant to what I asked.
Wow.
And not a single comment. And this was like, I would say 3-4 weeks ago, and still not a single comment. And I'm blown away. I'm literally pouring out I'm willing to help you. You guys are complaining that there's no help. I'm willing to help you. Please tell me what you want.
Tell me what you need. I'm here. You let me know. Yeah. And we're good to go.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is amazing. One of the things that I came across in prepping for the live event that we just did was, and I don't know how legitimate each of these stats are, but I think they hit at least an important point, no matter where the plus or minus is. But, one of the stats was the attrition rates in chiropractic. How many people are dropping out of the profession? And, one of the statistics I saw was within 10 years, 20 to 25% of the profession is quitting. And, I think that's a striking number. I think that's a huge number. And someone said to me at the live event that it may be even more, that, he had data that I think half of the profession in the United States was filing a tax return. So, whether that means half of them are in practice, but nonetheless, the point is, lots of people are quitting. Lawrence, we can go back and think about our own class. And I mean, we had 150 people. I think we did this one time, we were kind of chatting. I think I can think of 25, 30 people right off the top who don't practice chiropractic anymore.
And it's a sad state of affair. And actually, at the end of the day, though, I am happy for those people who quit, because obviously they know that this wasn't right for them, right? And I'd rather them find what's right for them and they actually go on with their careers and their lives than trying to do something and work at it that, is not working. But what I want to focus on is that, what about those people who are struggling and who are, waiting for someone to save them? Like, that's the thing that gets me, is like the comment of like the waiting for the profession to support them. That drives me absolutely insane, because no one is coming to save anyone. Not you, not me. Like, anybody who's ever been successful had to do it on their own back. Sure, did they have help? Absolutely. Did they have mentorship? Absolutely. But the mentors, the coaches, or anybody they don't dedicate their life just to save you. That's my point, is that no one wakes up in the morning and they're going to dedicate their whole entire life to help you only. They're there to help themselves.
Yeah, and you know what? I think that's a great thing. And, coming from, you or me, I think people will think, oh, I can't believe this guy just said, people are going to wake up every day and their aim is to help themselves. But, that is what we advise people, especially at Life by Design, is, go ahead and be self-interested at least. You don't have to be, altruistic. You don't have to be the quote unquote profession and try and save other people. Back to the people that quit, Lawrence. Yes, I'm glad that some of them dropped out, because obviously it wasn't the right profession for them. My bigger concern is both the people who, like you said, are thinking about quitting, but also those people who quit just because, they didn't have the tools or they didn't have the mindset in order to be successful. Because truthfully, many of those people will go and they'll jump to a new profession. So if you're thinking, hey, I'm going to quit chiropractic, this isn't right for me, there's a pretty good chance that depending on your reasoning for quitting, you're going to quit and you're going to probably go do something else that you're going to struggle with as well.
Absolutely.
There's a thread that's happening in you. And I think that's the theme of the show today, is there's something going on in you that is, limiting or putting a halt to your success.
It's funny, right? I'm sure there's actually studies on this, I think with surgeons, but really the gist of the story the study was to say that when something goes right, we take credit for it ourselves. When something goes wrong, it's always something else. It's always like the environment, it was like, we're the GFC that happened like 10 years ago, it's like, there's always something external when something goes wrong. But when it's something right, I was like, oh, it's all me. I'm skillful. I'm a genius. And this is human nature, and that's okay. I'm like that. I get it. I've been like that. I'm sure you have, and every single one of us listening has been like that. The key though is to go, what if it wasn't something else? What if it's you? Right? Take, they say take no blame, take no credit. But at the end of the day, like when you are successful, it's because of you. But when you fail, it's also because of you. Like maybe something is within us and our powers to be able to do something about it. And the question is to figure out exactly what that is. But that's your job to figure out what it is. And sure, do you need help with that? Yes, I agree you need help. But what I'm saying is that you have to be aware that you are the person who's dedicated their whole entire life for you. That's it. When you have that major awareness, and then you search for people who will help you, but realize that they're not there just to help you.
Right. Yeah, I mean, there's obviously, if I'm coaching with somebody, you're coaching with somebody, there's an exchange. And the reason I love helping them is because, they're a great client. They have values that match mine. But, when it comes down to it, yes, I'm going to help people. And there's probably some people that I help and exchange is very little. But for the most part, I'm enjoying the fact that they're exchanging something with me that I can then go use to do other things that I care about and value. And Absolutely. There's nothing wrong with that at all. And I think
it's a self-serving thing. We had this discussion a long time ago. I clearly remember this in chiropractic college, actually, in CMCC, when we read Iran, and we talked about, the self-serving purpose. And really, like, even Mother Teresa, right, was self-serving. Like, Right. People say, "Oh, she didn't earn any money." Well, no, she had massive amounts of power, but like her gift to give to others, just take care of the people, right? That in return, she got love. Like that's her exchange, right? But if she didn't get that, she wouldn't do it. You know what I mean? It's like that.
Well, and I even believe it was. I think Gentempo talked about in her particular case. Part of the exchange was somebody had to fly her around the world. Somebody had to fund all the things. So it's not as if she just, lived in poverty in order to take care of these people. There was an exchange, as you said, that was going on. So I think that, what we want to do, Laurence, on today's episode is shed some light on some of the challenges. So I don't want to put blame, because that would go against exactly what we're talking about. And the common take home is that the responsibility falls on us as individuals to be successful. But I still think there is some challenges that people need to look out for. So we're going to hit some of the highlights in terms of some of the things that are definitely challenging in the profession that I think are driving the attrition rates. But the solution is always going to be you. So we're not talking about these as if you can't overcome them, but we want to make sure that if you're a student, if you're a doctor, if you've been in practice 20 years, your eyes are open so we can say, all right, you know what? Yes, this is happening, but these aren't the reason I'm not successful. Yeah. We're going to find out some solutions that I could be successful through. So one of them is schools. What do you think is the problem, with the schools and how they're affecting chiropractors' success?
Well, you look at I mean, this is just my opinion. Okay, and I'll just state it right at the beginning. At the end of the day, the school has one intention. The one intention of the school is to graduate you, help you graduate and prepare you for graduation to get that little piece of paper. There's I don't think most of the schools are, I can't say for all, but when I can only speak for the school that I went to. The school that I went to, that you and I went to, prepared us to have a degree, and so that we can also pass our exam. Right. But passing that exam and having that piece of paper does not necessarily make me a successful chiropractor. It made me a chiropractor on paper, but it didn't make me a chiropractor. And so, I think what the outcome of the school is different than the outcome of what you intend to be when you actually have a career as a chiropractor. So I think that's the issue here, is that they're training, and we can argue about that, but think about all the years of things that we learned. How much of it you actually use right now? Like, let's face it, right? Of all the questions we got asked on the exam, I don't remember what they are, but like how many times did we actually use it? And the thing is that I'm not saying that it was bad, because we need to learn some foundations. We need to learn those things to get to where we are. I'm not suggesting that we shouldn't have learned it. Right. What I'm saying is that the school is not preparing us to become successful business chiropractors. That's not what their intention was. Their intention was to graduate you with a degree so that you have the safety of the public in mind as a chiropractor.
Right. And I believe that given that that's the intention of the schools, there probably is, at least in my experience, some false advertising in terms of what the schools are telling prospective students that they're going to be getting. They definitely, pump it up as if you're going to get everything you need, that, you'll get your license, you're going to get training, you're going to learn how to run a business, and so as a student, you go in, and I remember, we went into school that first year, I think that we felt, hey, if we just do what we're supposed to do at school, we're going to be really, really successful. And you and I both really committed to it. We had a great first year. We got a lot of stuff done, but now looking back, you can kind of chuckle and realize that, that was very little of what you would need to be successful.
Exactly. And I'm sure they still use this line. And I know we're 16 years out or 14 years out or whatever. I'm still,
right.
I remember still would it be 18 years ago? This has never been a better time to become a chiropractor. I'll bet you they're still using that line right now.
Yeah, lots of people are using that line right now. Yeah. So, there's the schools, there's the boards, right? I mean, the boards are a big problem in the sense that, what is being dictated, in terms of what needs to be learned to be a chiropractor has changed so much, over the last 40 years that lots of the students, because the schools drive to what's on the board exams, it's moving the profession away from just being a purely subluxation centered profession. So that, I think, is another major problem, that the students are facing.
Right.
What would you say? Go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I think it's important to recognize that. So let's look at the school and the boards. Okay. So the school and the boards are changing the way. Now, listen, like as a practitioner who's just like in the middle of somewhere, like, Melbourne or Sydney or Toronto, wherever, who has no interest in political, state, really has no influence on the way the board is going to change or the school is going to change. But what you can do, though, just because it's happening to you doesn't mean that you can't do something about it. You just got to realize that you got to remove, I think the key is remove the expectation that the school and the boards will prepare you to become a chiropractor. So which means that you then have to do extra learning, study to become a better chiropractor. That's it. Like, so that's like being very clear that you don't have that expectation. Like remove the expectation that just because you graduated doesn't mean you're going to be successful or become a great chiropractor. If you remove that expectation, then all of a sudden it allows you the opportunity to go, okay, which means I got to go to another 4 years of university, right? Not university, like university of life, which is basically go out there and learn and do it on your own dime and do it on your own study and search out for your own teachers and create your own university rather than relying on a formal education to teach you that.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Laurence, and it kind of leads you to the mindset of students and some of the challenges that the students face. So aside from the schools and the boards, I think you now have this whole class of students, and I think you've already hit head on this, and maybe you can go a bit deeper into it, but this idea that somehow within the first year or two, it seems as if students start to get this sense of entitlement. And I wonder if part of that is the millennial age and some of the culture of that, category of the market. But, people are expecting, quote unquote, the profession to come and save them. That seems to be a mindset that really crosses a lot of students on your side of the world and our side of the world.
Yeah, I hate to blame it on the millennials and the generation thing because I think enough people take shots at them. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And I get it. And I can see why they would take shots at them. But at the end of the day, though, the millennials also have a massive advantage. I think that's where you got to take the credit for being a millennial is that you have amazing advantage. The disadvantage you actually have, I'll talk about the advantage in a second, the disadvantage you don't have experience compared to someone who's been out for 20 years. I mean, you can't do anything about that. You just got to have 20 years of practice under your belt before that changes. Right. So the thing is that you don't have the experience. But the advantage that you have that someone who's been practicing for 20 years doesn't have is that you have the way better ability to pivot. And what I mean by pivot is that you have the ability to adapt way faster than someone who's 20 years in. Someone who's 20 years in they didn't grow up in the internet age. They didn't have, like you and I, like honestly, like I know we're dating ourselves, but really at the end of the day, we didn't grow up with internet. Like I still remember 1994 when I first got my email, right? That was the first time, we actually got online. And we were already, 18, 19 years old at that point. So the thing is that the millennials have that massive ability to adapt, which means they can change and make mistakes very, very quickly. So in one sense, they move on from things quickly, but in another sense, they actually try to find ways to shortcut their success, which is great because I think it's really important to find shortcuts. The only problem is that you got to remember you have to actually sustain something to actually get to the success. Success doesn't, just because you found a shortcut there, doesn't mean you still doesn't have to work at it to actually achieve the experience that you need to become successful. And that's the missing key. I think it's the experience that's missing and the longevity of staying with something long enough to actually get it done, long enough to actually master something. Because I think, we talk about chiropractic as being an art, science, and philosophy, right? The science part, Jamie and I, anybody can show you the exact science on how to become successful. But just because I showed you the science of it doesn't necessarily mean you become successful, because there's the missing part, which is the art, right? The art is you. The art is what you bring to the table. The art is how you actually apply the principles of you and the principles of chiropractic, and how you study your background, your experience, all of that stuff into practice, into the communication that you actually have with people. That is very hard to teach. I don't think it can be taught. It's something that has to be done. And I go back to this post, a blog post that I read, that I did on, David Chang, who was the founder and chef of Momofuku. And he said this beautiful quote on the podcast. He goes, you can't learn how to cook from a book. You have to. You can only learn how to be a chef by actually going and cooking. Like, that's the only way. And that's the same thing with chiropractic, is that I can teach you everything you need to know to become successful, but unless you actually go and do it and try it and fail, you're never going to actually develop the art to make you successful.
Well, it's funny how that is the student mindset, meaning that is what I think notoriously and traditionally that is what a student should be, is someone who is learning and they're failing and they're trying and they're learning and they're kind of repeating that cycle over and over. But I think there's definitely been a shift, definitely the last 10 or 15 years, where the student mindset now is, hey, I tried once, I failed, and that's it. I guess that doesn't work. So, we're stuck with this challenge as a student that they're going to have to overcome. And now we're talking with the doctors. So let's say we graduate these doctors, we're out in practice. What's the challenge with the doctors? Why is it that so many doctors themselves are quitting? What are they experiencing in practice that's making them think, hey, I can't do this, and that's it, I'm just going to drop out?
It's funny, because I think the same rings true. What I just said about failing is that I think the doctors who've been in practice for a while forgot how to fail. Right, because they've had that success. Like there's a period of time where they had a great success in their practices, and then now they're starting to see the slip. But because they had this strong foundation in their practice, they haven't noticed the slip as much. But they start to feel it, but they're trying to ignore it. They're going to blame it on some external factors and whatever's happening around the world. But it's almost like, I think of it like someone who's got a lot of asset. If you got a lot of asset, and in terms of your properties and money and everything, you're not going to worry about the mortgage going up and down, the mortgage rate going up and down. Like, you're not going to feel it because you have enough assets to worry about. But for someone who is starting out, who has no foundation, every basis point counts. Every 0.25% goes up, you're going to feel it. And so that's the same thing with chiropractors who's been in practice for a long time. They used to see, X amount, say they used to see 300 patients in a week, but now they're seeing 250, and they go, just chalk it up. Guess what? 5 years from now, it's going to be like down to 200. And it just starts to slip, and they don't realize what's happening is because they're not willing to risk, adapt and pivot as a millennial would when they first started. I mean, all of us would have done whatever it took to kind of get to that level. But once we get to that certain level, we hit a plateau, and we've forgotten to take the risk because we don't want to take the risk. And when you don't take the risk, what happens is that for this profession, I'm not talking about the individual chiropractor, for the profession, we lose. If we don't move and pivot along with what the marketplace, we're falling behind. And from the perception of the public and the utilization of the public, we're going to lose as a whole. And that's a very, very disappointing thing.
I think that doctors, in general, suffer from that fat cat syndrome. We get into practice, and I think one of the upsides and downsides is you can be financially successful in chiropractic and be a terrible chiropractor. It doesn't really take much to be successful. I mean, you do 80 visits a week at a decent per visit fee, and your overhead is tight. You're gonna have a 6-figure salary to take home, and you really did nothing. You really had very little investment, time, energy. And again, the other side is you get going and you start to be very protective of what it is that you have because your lifestyle starts to match. And yes, I think you just kind of give up this idea of learning or changing or adapting. And eventually, as you're eventually going to lose the success that you've had because, if you're not changing with the marketplace, you're going to suffer that same problem. You're going to lose market share.
Well, it's funny, and people will say, the argument is like, no, I'm still learning. I got to go get my CPD. I'm learning all the new techniques. I'm not talking about freaking techniques. Learning more techniques are going to make you better. Like, I get it. You're going to make you better from skillful and artful.
Sure.
Blah, blah, blah. But if you're not learning, but technique is one thing, which you're updating your techniques, but are you updating your way you communicate? Are you updating to the way we are moving along? I mean, iPhone 7 just came out, right? Mm-hmm. Right? I mean, 5 years ago, let's talk 5 years. That's not a long time, right? 5 years ago, it's like my son's age, right? 5 years. That's 2011. Do you remember 2011 the phone was iPhone 4?
Wow.
If you see an iPhone 4, you're going to go, wow, that's old school, right? That's only 5 years ago, right?
Right.
You want to talk about Facebook Messenger, Facebook Messenger, remember that we communicate back and forth? That just started 5 years ago.
Wow.
Uber just went public for the first time 5 years ago. So a lot has happened in 5 years. And so how much have you, the chiropractor, have changed in 5 years? That's what the question I want to love to ask people. It's like, how much are you still doing the same thing from 5 years ago? Because Apple has moved on, 4 versions, right? But past that, 4S, 5, 5S, 6, 6S, and so on and so forth, and on 7. And and look at what has Uber has transformed the whole freaking world in transportation. There's Uber in freaking Bali.
Right.
So, and Uber is the largest taxi company in the world that doesn't even own a single taxi. And that is happening right in front of our eyes. And that's only been the last 5 years.
Right.
And if we don't, as a chiropractor profession, don't adapt to the new technology and the way, I'm sure you've been teaching other people with the marketing and the way we actually communicate. That's the key thing. It's how we communicate with our clients. They are shorter attention span. They have a lot more variety of choices and option, right? And so therefore you need to speak to their needs and their attention span, and also their ability to be able to process the information and what drives them and why do they want to spend money with you.
Yes, it really is amazing, Laurence, how, I think part of it is you and I and the rest of Life by Design and people that we interact with, they spend their days trying to continue to learn and to apply these ideas and these skills. And from a business perspective, you step outside of chiropractic and any other business, this would just be the norm, just be expected, maybe outside of healthcare just in general, but, it's expected that you would just continue to grow and figure out new things and learn new marketing and learn business skills and develop your leader. And there would be a consistent thing, but we don't see that in the profession. And we've talked today about, schools, students, doctors. The other group that I want to talk about, in the last group that I want to touch on is us. And I mean that in a good way and a bad way. We do coaching, consulting, so do you. And there's lots of people that do this in the profession. But I think that there's a particular chance for a pitfall here. And, I think sometimes the coaches and consultants, leaders, quote unquote, are playing a huge role in why many chiropractors are quitting as well.
Yeah, I think it's very... It's the truth. It's the hard part is that, the coaches I look at a lot of coaches and coaching companies, and the key is that there's some great ones and there's some ones that are not adapting as well. Like the coaching model's got to move. And
exactly.
And you can't be coaching the same, stuff that we've been hearing in the 80s and 90s or even 2000. You were just talking about how other industries, I'm friends with like a lot of high profile entrepreneurs, and especially like if you look at we can't even adapt on a year-to-year basis. Facebook marketing, people who are in Facebook marketing, they're adapting like on a monthly basis, in terms of their marketing. And so we as chiropractors don't even adapt on a yearly basis, let alone like 5-yearly basis. It's very difficult if we don't, as coaches, or if you want to talk about us as coaches, we don't find the best way to communicate to the patients and to the prospects and help those chiropractors to understand. The challenge is that there's lag time, right? Like I mentioned before, is the art. Like I can teach you the science of it, but you still got to be artfully be able to create and communicate that message that we're trying to teach you, which then takes time, right? So I can take someone who's never learned about, say, I don't know, Facebook marketing or Facebook, even just Facebook posts, say, okay, how to uniquely create posts or interest in even blogging. If they've never done it before, guess what? The first post you're going to do is going to be crap. Sorry, I didn't want to swear. It's going to be crap, right? And the 10th one is probably going to be crap as well, but it's going to be better than your first one. Like we've been podcasting for years. You've been doing this longer than I have. I actually got inspired doing podcasts because of you. Right? You were doing radio, man. You were doing the radio show.
I was old school.
Yeah, you were old school. So, we go back. Like, you've been doing this, and you can tell. Like, you can tell that you have that experience. And a lot of people want to kind of get up and start doing podcasting. Thinking like, well, if you can do it, I can do it. I get that, but guess what? I'm 5 years ahead. So, and you're like 6-7 years ahead. So, which means that you have that much more skill set that you have to attain. Now, doesn't mean you can't do it within a 2-year period, but you're not going to do it in 10 shows or 5 shows. And so that lag time, is it enough? Do we have enough? Is it enough? Can we give that information and pass it on to chiropractors fast enough so that they actually have the time to actually develop that skill set and actually make a difference? I don't know. Only time will tell.
The other component of this too, if we wrap this kind of up, and I'll come up with some solutions here in a second, we can chat about those, Lawrence. But if you wrap all this up and you say, okay, let's say, yes, this is our responsibility as individual doctors to be successful. The reason chiropractors are quitting is because of us. It's not the profession. But let's say forget about the schools, forget about the students, the doctors and all their problems. Let's say they eventually say, I want help. Therein lies the problem with coaching, is that, as you said so well, many of the coaches aren't adapting either. Many of the coaches are still using old models. So if they ever even do get to the point where they're reaching out and saying, I want to get your help, they're going to get help from someone who's, practicing or teaching an antiquated model. And therein lies the problem. Yeah. Even our, top gurus, if you will, are still teaching things that are going to lead to a low level of success. And so the cycle continues that eventually these, students and docs who say, I need your help, they get some help. They think they're getting help and they're still not successful. That's going to lead to them eventually quitting, because they're like, all right, I've done everything. I've done it myself. I've got help. And you know what? I'm still not successful. That's it. I'm out. So what are the solutions? We talked about a few in the pre-show. Let's hit the highlights so we can get people, at least thinking in the right direction. What is it that they can start doing, Lawrence, to take some responsibility and really start moving towards whatever it is that they set out for themselves?
I think we don't need to, beat this too much, but I think that just to set the tone, number one is have the awareness that you have, no one's coming to save you, and you need to actually take the responsibility. So I would think we talked a lot about that. So that's the awareness first, and that will challenge you to actually do something about it. The second thing I think is really important is that I was just watching the Rio Olympics back here in Australia, and watching the swimming, and one of the key things that stood out for me was watching the women's 400 meters and 800 meter freestyle. And there's this United States swimmer, Katie Ledecky. I watched her swim right off the blocks. Boom, she goes in. First 25 meters, you can just tell she's starting to lead ahead. And by about 50 meters, she was so far ahead of her competitors. It wasn't even funny. By the end of the race, she was, probably 4 body lengths. And she finished the race 4 seconds before the second place winner. And that's in the 400. Wow. In the 800 meters, she finished 11 point somewhat seconds ahead of the second place winner. 11 seconds. Freaking Usain Bolt started and finished faster by the time the second place winner actually got her silver medal. That's ridiculously fast. And so I was thinking to myself, I go, well, if I was Katie Ledecky, what would I be thinking? I mean, I'm so far ahead. I'm not even worried about my competitors anymore. I only have one race to go. And it's 800 meters, it's a long race, right? And so she's got to be thinking about her own world record, and she's just going to be swimming in her lane. Then I thought about, what if I was the second place person, or a third place, or even the seventh place winner? I'm looking at Katie and going, she is so far ahead. I have no freaking chance, right? And you can try to catch up and make some distance, but really, she's so far ahead, that you've lost, right? But you still have still got silver medal or, bronze medal or whatever to go after. And really, at the end of the day, you can't be worrying about what she's doing. You just can only be worrying about what you're doing. And it came to the concept of going, you should only swim in your own race. You need to forget about worrying about what anybody else is doing, what Jamie's doing, or what anybody else is doing. Remove the expectation and comparison that what success means to, that person's success means successful and this one means forget about that. Just know what success means to you. I don't care what success means to you, right? As long as I know that that's your potential, right? And you're the best person to judge that. So learn to swim in your own lane, swim your own race, and stop comparing yourself to other people's success. Just know that this is right for you, or whatever's right for you, and then go for that. Aim for that. I think that's the responsibility, rather than trying to compare yourself. Oh, this person's seeing 500 a week, I must see 500. Well, maybe, but maybe that's not for you. Why does it matter that someone's seeing 500? You need to be seeing 500. Because I think what we forget to see is that when we perceive to be successful, we forgot to see all the other crap that's going on in their life, right? So I say, forget about that. Just focus on your own lane. I think that's really, really important. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes total sense. I think that's a great point, Lawrence. I think it's something that people forget about in this journey along the path to success. And I think the last one you mentioned, and we'll finish on this one, is just this concept of keep on learning.
Yeah, I think one of the things is that going back to the lag time theory and what we talked about, what David Chang said from Momofuku, is that you got to enjoy the process. The mastery is in the process, is in the learning, not in the achievement, right? Masters, I'm talking about the masters, the greats, right? I'll say Joe Montana, right? And you'll say, you'll say your quarterback or whoever.
Tom Brady.
And you might, when you think about those guys, right? They are great if they're masters at what they do, is because they love the process. They love the process. You know, they don't just, it's not just about winning. It's about, they just enjoy like getting there. Like, you know, I know Tom Brady, like I have high respect for Tom Brady, and what he does in his preparation, you know, and the things that he does and what he doesn't do. That is process. Like, people who are masters are artful in their process. I think we as humans, forget about chiropractic, we as humans need to appreciate the process. That it took a process to get to where you are, no matter how successful or you know you think you are. It took a process, which means that to get to where you need to go or where you want to go, it's going to take a process. And it's dedicated practice. Like, you know, it's kind of funny, it's practice. It's dedicated practice. It's about doing it and doing it and doing it and continually doing it and moving ahead and seeing the small steps. It's the little bets. Don't worry about the big jumps and the big leaps. They will happen, but it's like the little steps of preparation that will help you get to when it's game time, when the preparation and practice it got you that level. When it's game time, you can switch it on. But if you don't practice, you can't switch it on when the time calls for you to switch it on.
Man, Laurence, believe it or not, we've gone way past 30 minutes. I think the content on today's show is as good as it gets, so people are going to stay on and listen to that. People can head over and see Laurence at driveyourpractice.com. I know Laurence has a bunch of stuff there, probably some free downloads. You can catch him on Facebook as well. And Laurence, you know, I'm pretty sure we're going to have you back on the show again here in the future. There's always topics that we'd love to have your insight on. And, you know, you're what do they give the special degrees when you don't go to an actual university? Well, you're part of the Life by Design. You're part of the Life by Design family.
Honorary degrees.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. So you are an honorary part of the Life by Design family. We appreciate you. If anybody would love to get in touch with Laurence, just head over to Drive Your Practice and find him on Facebook. So again, guys, thank you so much for listening to the podcast. Life by Design for Chiropractors, the voice of reason in chiropractic.